This is the Leo Clamaco podcast.
And so
Were you choosing her or the boys?
So the boys, and I didn't leave because of them. I tried to protect them as much as I could forever. And that's the part that hurts my heart the most, is that in this last year, she's like, they would call me dad, and we just like that. Their dad has passed away. He OD'd when he was 36, which was like 8 years ago. And I probably legally should watch what I say, but I have my thoughts of why he actually did that.
Oh, wow.
And because, dude, so the last six weeks of my relationship, out of 3 years, new house, new car, new gym, all for her, right? Building her business. I would have like $100,000 weekends with Top 8 Speaker, thinking she was going to be like, oh, and we would fight more than anytime I had success. She would be so mad at me. And it was like being with my stepfather. I couldn't understand it.
She didn't want you above her.
She didn't want me above her. Because the reason that narcissists, so female narcissists especially, they don't choose weak dudes, okay? The dudes that they choose, they innately are protectors and providers. And the female narcissist chooses that on purpose because they know they can weaponize it against the man. And that's how she's able to control you. Because the empathetic person, I can walk in a room and light it up. We can make an instant connection. Narcissists can't do that. They're void of this. This is a really important thing I do want to talk about, is that so childhood trauma happens, and I'm not going to obviously air her stuff because there's a part of me that loves part of her, right? But
as a human.
Yes. But the way that narcissists usually get made, almost 100% of narcissists, is that something terrible happens to them at childhood. So if I'm thinking back to what happened to her, I would fucking kill somebody. 10 times over. Every time. And it's hard because as an empathic man, that's why we stay connected, because you can so deeply relate to what they've been through.
Yeah.
And you just want to choose them because you want them to know that they're worthy of love, when in reality, you want that for yourself. And so narcissistic people, or childhood trauma in general, you're usually going to go one way or the other. You're going to either go towards a narcissist, which is you're so broke, so fractured, and so ashamed of that little girl that I can never even look at her again. I can never revisit her again. And so anything that reflects that back to me. So if Marshall is, being too vulnerable and he opens up my vulnerability and I'm loving him, and all of a sudden I realize, holy shit, what am I doing? Now, it happens like that.
That's
and
crazy.
Once it happens, so in the narcissistic, what happens in this narcissistic process is you have this love bombing phase in the beginning of a relationship, or the idealization phase, when they find you and they think you're the bee's knees, dude. Like
honeymoon phase, right?
Yeah. Well, yes, but it's even deeper than that, because they're thinking, oh my God, I finally found somebody who's going to make me safe. I finally got it. Oh my God, thank you. And they're head over heels. But then it could be one thing, one tiny thing that fractures it forever. And now all of a sudden you are public enemy number one, and they feel like it's their responsibility to teach you a lesson for hurting them. So childhood trauma, that's how narcissists are made. But also childhood trauma, you could go the other way, which you become an empath, which means that for your survival, you learn how to read a room you just know you can read a room instantly, because your survival depends on it, being able to understand the narcissistic parent or the abuser so you can stay safe. So that's how it happens. Now, when we go back to the world of duality and contrast, I'm trying to I want people to understand is that as an unhealed empath, you are just as toxic as the narcissist. A narcissist abuses people. A narcissist abuses people to get what they want. An empath abuses themselves to get what they want. So if I am staying with my ex because I want to prove to her that I love her, well, now all of a sudden my behavior becomes just as toxic reflection, but for totally opposite reasons.
Right.
And so what happens with these men, and anybody that gets out of a narcissistic relationship, the number one question, if you're watching this, you already know what the number one question is: am I the narcissist? 100% of the time, that's what people want to know. And then it's, why did she do this? But am I the narcissist? And the reason that is because that toxic empathy inside of you, it reflects the traits of what the narcissist is telling you you are.
Let me ask you a question. If you're asking yourself that question, then you're not, right? Because
almost 100% of the time.
Right.
That's like the ultimate litmus test.
Right.
People go like,
one wouldn't.
You would never. You would never ask yourself. And then the second question to ask yourself, because that's not good enough. I know from experience, especially if you're dudes like us.
Right.
And actually there's a bunch of So I have like famous actors and famous athletes that like have messaged me and talked to me. They want to know the story. And so these people, these types of people, I just only say that not to name, would never name drop. I only say that to let everybody know that this happens to like
all
the
levels.
most successful people.
Yeah. Especially the most successful people.
Especially them, dude.
Yeah.
And so if you're like us, again, I went to 3 therapists. They kept telling me over the 3 years that it's probably her, not you. And I was like, nope, you're wrong. It's definitely me. She told me it's me. She's awesome. I love the boys. And so I switched therapists 3 different times.
Wow.
We went to couples therapy, and literally, I don't know if I shouldn't be mad at him, but I think back and I'm like, how did you not fucking see this, dude? But the therapist would be crying over watching me cry because he could see how deeply I was hurt, but still
Couldn't do shit about it.
Couldn't do shit about it. So I say that to say, if you think you're the narcissist and you're like me telling you, hey, if you're asking a question, you're not, that's not good enough. So the other thing I would ask you is that, are you a bully? Like, do you just straight up bully people just to bully them? And if you don't, you're definitely not a narcissist, because that's why, and I didn't know, I started an anti-bullying program when I was in junior high or in high school.
Yeah.
And that's why I always just hated bullies. I've always been the guy that's going to stand up. I don't care if you're a stranger. I don't care where I'm at. Nobody gets to pick on somebody that can't defend themselves.
I agree.
And I've always been like that. And now I know why. And so that's the other question is like, okay, if you're asking the question if you're a narcissist, you're not. But if you can answer say that you're not a bully, then you're definitely probably not a narcissist. Now, why do people feel like they're a narcissist then? Well, dude, the stories are all the same. I'm telling you millions of stories, right? I didn't know. I thought I was a narcissist because she told me I was. I had never even heard the term narcissist or gaslighting until she started telling me that. I went and bought a college level book on it. Oh my God, knowing now, when it showed up in the mail, she was probably like, you motherfucker. But so I'm like reading for the last year, like, okay, trying to figure all this out, you know? And she's just going in on me. And once so you have the love bombing phase, but once the fracture happens, you move into what's called the devaluation phase. Now, the devaluation phase runs...
Real quick.
Yeah.
She underestimated you.
Oh,
every single step of the way.
100%. And she should have known better knowing me, dude.
She thought that she was going to be able to call you a narcissist and you not go dig up what the fuck she's talking about.
I tried to tell her when we got together. I'm like, did you not fucking know who you're like? I'm like the super empath girl. Like, you didn't have to be this way,
what?
Right? And so right up to, and even now,
that was her biggest mistake.
100%.
Was underestimating you.
Well, I always thought like she was like the super narc, like a super shredder in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle 2's dating myself. Yeah, you know, and so like you move into this devaluation phase, and what that means is that I'm going to say she, not my ex, but she too.
Right.
They're purposely trying to break you down, but little by little. That's why the gaslighting is so crazy, because they can't do it all at once, or you might leave and tell on them. So you have these little breadcrumbing moments of where they return to the love bombing phase.
It's crazy.
But then they always go back to the devaluation phase, which is belittling and demeaning, and they do it in front of the kids. Then they weaponize the kids against you, and then you know the kids are starting to feel the fact that they don't want to be scared of their mom, so they have to agree with her and all these things. And so in the devaluation phase is when you really start the trauma bond starts to form.
Right.
So the trauma bond, for people that don't understand, your brain starts to have a chemical, physical dependency on them. You become trauma bonded to them. So you're literally an addict, okay? So that's why so many addicts fall into these relationships. So now you're trauma bonding to the narcissist, but this is starting to cause cognitive dissonance. And so cognitive dissonance, for the people who don't know, it basically means that you believe 2 things are true at once. You believe, oh my God, she loves me because she told me that I'm the best thing in the world. But also, she hates me because she tells me she does. And because you can't figure out which is true, your brain is basically buffering. And the whole time, you can't tell anybody in the outside world what's happening. You're trying to keep up this facade. You're thinking there's something wrong with me because she's constantly telling you that. And then it all starts to fall apart. But once you really, okay, so we got to stop 1 second. The devaluation phase runs congruently with what's called a smear campaign. And the smear campaign is systematically and strategically deployed by a narcissist.
Propaganda, right?
Yeah, so the outside world will know that you're the abuser. So if you ever do leave, or you ever try to tell them, they'll be like, well, you mean Marshall's the abuser? Like, he used to yell at me. But they do this so when you do leave, they can immediately move on to their next narcissistic supply publicly without being judged. So for example,
Wow.
3 years in this relationship, I'm Mr. Right, I'm the dad, all the things. I'm gone for 5 weeks and she's out on a boat on Labor Day with our kids and this new guy and his kids all over social media. Completely destabilizing. That's when I knew. That was actually the moment that I knew. So thank God she stole that $2,000 from your business clients, because I know what's up, girl, but we won't talk about that. Thank God you did that. And so she took that money, got a boat, and that's what literally blew this whole entire thing open. And so for the men or the women too that are watching this, that's what makes it so hard to leave, is because when you do go to leave, mine was such a blessing. It was so easy. I just left. I left the state, no marriage, no kids. But there are dudes all over the world who are police reports, falsified police reports. This is like the most common thing.
Wow.
Kids are taken from them. And what happens is they will a lot of times record you, or they'll document you reacting to them. So they push you until you break. And then what happens is what's called reactive abuse. Now, this is why people trip and they think they're the narcissist, because the narcissist, one, has told you you're a narcissist. You've never heard of it before.
Right.
They tell you you're gaslighting. You've never heard of it before. And then when you snap finally, they go, you see, I told you. And then you're like, oh my God, because it's not you. Wow. So that's called reactive abuse. And really what happens is...
What a fuckery.
It's fuckery, dude. You get these things called...
It's like a witch spell.
And so my ex calls herself a witch, and I found out that almost all these guys I've talked to, same with their women. They're like, oh, we're witchy. Anyways, you get these narcissistic fleas. And that's what it's called when you start to take on their traits. And that's what's so destabilizing about the whole thing. And
I feel like it's worse for these men to leave also, because society puts that pressure.
Bro. And then when you leave, so all of my friends chose her. All of my friends chose her.
Wow.
All of them. All of my clients chose her. And that's the only reason. I had nothing left. My personal, so the last 6 weeks, finish the story up. The last 6 weeks, I'm living in the basement of our house on a mattress on the floor. My boys aren't talking to me. She's not talking to me. She hasn't talked to me in 2 months. And I don't mean to be dramatic, but I'm sitting there staring at my cig. Like, I'm just going to put this thing in my mouth and I'm going to be 40. My personal brand is burnt up. I've lost all of my money and all of my clients. All of my friends hate me and think that I'm a crazy asshole. And this woman, because I didn't know at the time, I still didn't know. I still thought I was the problem. And I gave this woman everything, and she's right. I'm a fucking loser. And I thought all there was left to do is just fuck this. Like, what else is there to do? And so in a last ditch effort, because narcissists isolate you from your family on purpose, I wasn't allowed to call my mom anymore, because I was made to think I was a sissy boy, a little mama's boy who was spoiled. So I hadn't talked to my mom in a year.
The mind fuck.
So I'm sitting there one night finally, and it's 3 days before our youngest son's birthday. And I called my mom up and I told her what was going on. And I didn't want to tell my mom, because what if I was wrong? I didn't want mom to hate her even more.
Right.
So I call up my mom, and she calls my sister, who's a 30-year-old farm girl. She has 3 kids of her own now, and don't know my sister that. I know her, but we don't talk because my stepdad made her hate me. And she just said, I'm coming to get you. And so she drove her pickup truck all the way out to Montana from Illinois, packed up all my stuff, and drove me away. And she literally, Bryn, saved my life. And if it wasn't for her coming to get me, I probably would have taken it. Now, I know that God had a plan for me, but that's what happens. These men start to suffer so bad that they know that nobody's going to believe them. And so for me to be able to share this message online, that's why it's growing so fast, because for the first time, millions of men across the world are going, oh my God, thank you. Thank you for standing up and saying that. So have I always been the person that crossed the line and went first? It's always been me. But it never mattered, and I never felt worthy of anything or like it was important until now. And now I understand why God did everything he's done to lead me up to this point, so I could become strong enough in my faith to share this message, to be the guy that goes, you know what, I'm blowing the whistle on the whole damn thing. And I have been. And it turns out with social media and everything, the rise of narcissistic women are obviously it's blowing up.
Huge.
But that starts with that comes from decades of weak men.